Hey guys, welcome back to another Planet Mithril Paints, and today we'll be showing you an easy 3-step guide to painting the ferocious, ravenous, vicious hounds of Sauron, the Wild Wargs. This is the paint scheme that can be replicated quickly, easily and efficiently to give you a battle-ready model in no time at all, and can also be replicated for Warg riders and evil mounted models alike. So without further ado, please sit back, relax and enjoy the video. Start off by base coating all the fur over the warg with a 50-50 mix of Steel Legion drab and dried bark. The dried bark tones down the Steel Legion nicely and creates a more natural base tone for the style of fur we're looking for. This will come out very dark once dried, but the overall lighter tone of the model we're striving for as our finished product will really benefit from this deep, earthy brown tone to work off initially. Now we're going to layer over the whole model by adding more Steel Legion drab to the previous mix. Your mix should be an approximate 80-20% split in favour of Steel Legion drab here. This will cover nicely over the darker hues of the initial base coat and give us a really nice natural warg colour for the following dry brushing stages. Make sure here to cover as much of the fur as possible. Pay attention to the tufts around the sides and the backs of the legs, as well as the underside of the warg itself. We want to cover all the dark base coat. Once the wash is dry, apply a heavy dry brush with the previous Steel Legion dry bark mix. Dry brushing here with the bulk of the warg's fur is the most time efficient and effective way to create an authentic looking fur. This relayer should cover all the raised areas of fur, leaving the agrate fur shade showing in the deepest recesses between the hair strands. Don't worry too much about clipping over onto the face or lower legs here, just make sure to spend the time and attention to get uniform, even coverage to all of the warg's fur. Now we're going to lighten the hue of the fur further by applying another heavy dry brush with pure Steel Legion drab. Now you can start to focus on more of the outside of the warg's coat and less between the legs and the undercarriage, which will help create a natural sense of depth and shadow from the bulk of its body. Note here that the hindquarters of the warg have no sculpted fur, so make sure that this gets even coverage from the dry brushing stages just to avoid it looking too dark in contrast to the rest of the fur. We want to create some subtle differentiation in tone across the warg to avoid it becoming one big Steel Legion based blob on the tabletop. With a smaller dry brush, apply a lighter dry brush to the upper crest of fur running down the warg's back with pure Masse desert. You can feather this down its back slightly to create a subtle blend with the bulk of the body fur. Now apply an all over lighter dry brush with a 50-50 mix of Steel Legion drab and Masse desert. This will help to bring up the overall tone of the main fur and tie it in nicely with the pure Masse on the mohawk running down his back. By keeping our dry brushes increasingly lighter as each stage progresses, we'll be further and further accentuating the muscle definition and texture of the fur across the whole model. Add more Messy Desert to the mix for the next dry brush stage, again progressively making your dry brushing layers lighter to further accentuate the muscle definition across the model. Now apply a very light dry brush over the edges of the fur with a mix of the Messy Desert and padded witch flesh. Keeping this as light as you possibly can will mean the paint only clips the absolute upper and outer edges of fur and keeps the previous dry brushing layer showing underneath, which should give you a really well defined finished product with a natural blend from the darker areas through to the lighter edges where the light will be bouncing off your skin. If you want to create some differentiation across your Warg army, you can now apply a further dusting of Tyrant Skull to the whole model, which will just lift the overall hue of the fur and give it a slightly paler look to that of the other finished Wargs. Subtle changes like this can really help to keep a large Warg army looking visually interesting and impactful on the tabletop. Base coat the head, chin fur and legs with a mix of storm vermin fur, rhinox hide and abaddon black. Storm vermin fur in itself is slightly brownish in pigment, the richness of which will be intensified by the rhinox hide and will help it blend into the main colour of the body more than standard greys would here. Layer over all these areas now by adding more storm vermin fur to the previous mix. Once the wash is dried, re-layer over with the previous mix, leaving the Agrak fur shade showing in the deepest recesses to create a natural shadow across the facial details and the musculature of the legs. The Warg's face is very well defined, so blocking out these outer raised areas isn't too taxing at this stage. Apply a highlight now with pure Storm Vermin Fur. Focus on defining more of the facial features and framing the Warg's expression by concentrating on the upper areas of skin where the light will be hitting. Areas to focus on are the jawline, eyes, nose, foot pads, and the long defined bone structure across their legs. You can also give your Warg a snarling look by drawing your paint in small horizontal lines across his snout leading up to the back of his head, which is a really nice touch. Finally, apply an edge highlight with a mix of Storm Vermin Fur and Dawnstone. Keep your highlights tighter and finer and concentrate again on the upper and outermost areas of facial detail and leg musculature to create natural definition. Once you're happy with the face, you can carefully pick out his eyes with Abaddon Black and pinpoint dots of pallid witch flesh. Very carefully pick out any of the exposed gums with Bugman's Glow. This isn't a strictly necessary addition to the model, but we like the extra ferocity it adds to the Warg's expression. Apply a pinpoint highlight across the gums with Cadian Fleshtone. Pick out all the teeth and claws across the model with Rakarth flesh. Apply a pinpoint dot highlight to the tips of all the teeth and claws of pallid witch flesh to give them a sharpness characteristic to these ferocious animals. There you have it, a ferocious, hungry beast ready to storm the battlefield in search of his next meal.